Hi everyone, and welcome to another Make It Monday episode with the South Dakota Agricultural Heritage Museum. My name again is Sarah. I'm the education coordinator, and today we are going to be making seed bombs. Now, seed bombs are something that you can make at home in your house, and you can give as presents or you can plant yourself, and it's a great way to plant some more flowers for our pollinators that are out and working hard this summer to pollinate our plants and our crops and a bunch of different things. And so we want to make sure they have plenty of things to pollinate with. And so this is just a little help to have everything ready to go for them. So before we get started, I'll go over what supplies we need. You'll need a bunch of construction paper, and I actually use scraps for this project. This is a great way to use up some scraps. I have a folder full of scraps that I just pull from when I need scraps for random projects here and there from things I've used in the past. And any color you'd like is just fine, or if you want to use more than one color, you're certainly welcome to that as well. You will need a scissors. You'll need a bowl for each color paper you're planning on doing. You'll need something to form your seed bombs in, and so you have a few different options. You could use just a regular old muffin tin if you'd like. You can also use, there's a lot of fun shaped silicone molds out there right now. I happen to have a pig tray right here, so I'll make some pigs today. If you also don't have any molds or muffin tins at home, that's totally fine. You can also form them by hand, and I'll explain that later. You'll need either a blender or a food processor. And so I have the container for my blender down here. The rest of my parts are upstairs, but I'll kind of show you what to do with this. You'll need some paper towels. And then you'll need some seeds. And so whenever I buy seeds to use to make seed bombs, I always make sure that it's some type of a flower mix so that it attracts a few different kinds of pollinators and has a few different options for you in there. I also plant something that fits into the zone that we live in, and you can find that information on the back of the seed package. I also look to see, like today I'm using a hummingbird and butterfly mix that I'm using that will attract some different pollinators. The really important thing to do though is to look to see, it should list the type of flowers that are in your mix in the back, and I always try to buy something that has some flowers and seeds that are native to the area that I'm working in, so that you know that the plants will survive and thrive and work really well for what you're hoping it works for. And so if you want to look to see what some native plants are in your area, you can go ahead and go online and just do a quick Google search or something and search like your state and then native plants, and then it should come up with a nice list for you. And so those are all the supplies you'll need. You'll also need access to some water. And so if you're doing this outside, you can use something like a hose or something like that. I just use my sink upstairs. So those are the supplies you'll need, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you'll need to do is decide what color paper you want to use. I'm just going to cut a few things today, and so I'll show you an example with this nice blue here. But what you're going to want to do is cut your paper into about 1-inch squares. And now this isn't something where you have to grab a ruler and measure it out. This does not have to be a precise thing, just so that you get about that 1-inch square that you're going for. And like this is a great example on the edge of this piece. You can see that I kind of have it cut out a little bit of a curve there. That's totally fine. They don't even have to be squares if you're using up scraps. Just make sure that they're about 1 inch by 1 inch. So you go ahead and do that process until you have enough paper cut so that you can make your seed bombs. And so I've already gone ahead and pre-done some of my paper here and gone through the process. But you can see that I have some pink paper in here. I had about half a bowl of paper in here when I started before I blended it up. And so I still have a little under a half a bowl in here now that I have it in a pulp. So that's about how much you'll get based on how much paper you cut up. And so as you can see, I cut up some pink and green for today. After you get your papers cut into these nice little 1-inch chunks, then you can go ahead and put them in a bowl and add water all the way to the top of the bowl, and make sure that that paper sits submerged in this water for anywhere from 20 minutes to a few hours. And so I let mine sit for 20 minutes, and then I checked it. I always make sure when you're working with paper like construction paper and you're putting it in water, it's really easy for it to get stuck together. And so I just make sure to go through and make sure all the pieces are getting wet. After I checked mine at 20 minutes, I noticed that there were still a few pieces that were kind of stuck together and needed to submerge a little bit longer. And so I let it sit for another 10 minutes and it was good. But you can let this sit for up to 2 hours if you'd like. After you have all of your pieces submerged for that 20-minute to 2-hour mark, then you can go ahead and blend it into a pulp. And so that's when your food processor or your blender comes into play. And so I have this old blender that I use just for craft purposes, for different things that I make around the house. And so I went ahead and dumped all of my soaked paper and water right in here, threw the lid on, and then I went ahead and pulsed it until it was a nice pulp. Now it's going to be a really watery pulp when you get done with it, but I found that if you keep the water in here when you're trying to blend it into a pulp, it will blend it into a pulp a lot faster than if you just try to put the paper in here and try to mix it that way. And so you'll have a nice mix of pulp and water when you get done. After that, I have found the easiest way to try to get some of that water out is I was working in my sink upstairs. So I actually took a layer of paper towels, laid it down over my drain in my sink, and I poured the contents of my blender right onto the top of that paper towel. And then I used the paper towel to squeeze out all that moisture. That way you don't get random pieces of paper that go down your drain or different things that will clog up your drain. It stays all contained in that paper towel. And so after I did that, I ended up with this pulp. And so you can see that it's a little bit crumbly, which is definitely okay. Crumbly is fine, but you want to make sure that you try to get enough moisture out of this so it's not dripping wet. And so you can see that I've got a nice pulp-like consistency. And again, I have it for my pink and my green. After you get done with that, then you get to start making your seed bombs, which is the fun step. And so if you're using a tin or if you're using a silicone mold, either way, it is pretty much the same process. And so I'm going to go ahead and use my silicone mold today. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of my pulp and press it into my mold. And I'm going to fill it about halfway up. So I've got that nice and pressed in there. Then I'm going to take my seed mix, and I'm just going to take like a pinch of seeds and sprinkle it over this layer. So you can see I've got my nice layer of seeds in there. Then I'm going to go ahead and keep filling up with my pulp here until I fill up the whole entire mold. And then you're done. So I've got that nice and flat across the top. I've gone ahead and made sure I pressed down really nice and tight into the mold so that it makes that shape. So like I said, this is what you can do if you're using a silicone mold. I'll go ahead and show you an example with a muffin tin now. So again, I'm going to take some of my paper pulp and press it down into my tin here. Since this is a bit of a bigger mold, I am going to take a few pinches of my seeds here. And then I'm going to switch colors here. I'll use pink on one layer, I'll use green on the other, and make it kind of look like a watermelon. But again, I just push that down in here. Make sure I have it nice and firmly pressed in. And if you're using a muffin tin, you don't need to fill it all the way to the top. My silicone mold is about a ½ inch thick from top to bottom. And so I'm actually only going to fill in my muffin tin about halfway up because that's really as big as you need it. So I've gone ahead and done that as well. If you don't have a mold or a muffin tin or something like that, you can always do this just freehand as well. So you could take some of your paper pulp here. And I kind of made it into a flat area. And then I'm going to take a pinch of seeds and put right there in the center. And then I'm just going to form a ball because balls are pretty easy to form. And I'm just going to wrap that up and add a little more pulp on the outside and make that into a nice ball, just like that. And so that's just a few different ways that you can make your different seed bombs today. You also have the option of taking different things like cookie cutters or anything like that, anything that you could form a shape to, and using that as a mold as well. But now that I have these done, I'm going to go ahead and let these sit for 24 to 48 hours to dry out. And so you're going to want to let them dry out in a drier area, not like a moist, damp basement where it's not going to dry out fast. Just make sure you might want to put it by like a fan or a window or something like that, just so that it gets some airflow and it gets dried out. And after you let these sit for 24 to 48 hours, then you have plenty of time to let these sit and wrap them up or give them as gifts or use them on your own. When you use these out in the public and you want to plant these so that they can grow, you'll want to go ahead and dig a hole in the ground just like you would a normal seed, place these in, throw some water on them just to get them moist again, and then cover it up just like a normal seed, and then you should see some plant growth just like you would whenever you plant flower seeds in a typical garden. And so that is how you do this. They will stay like this and easy to use and ready to go for as long as your seeds are good. And so seeds usually have a date that they have like a sell-by date on the back, so you'll want to use these within that season. But that's how you make some seed bombs. Again, these are great things that you could give as gifts or you could use as your own. And it's a great way to add some color out into your garden or different areas where you want to add some color and plants for those pollinators. And a great way to do it because the paper just decomposes as your seeds grow, which is wonderful. So that's been another episode of Make It Monday from the South Dakota Agricultural Heritage Museum. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and shoot me an email. Again, my name is Sarah. I'm the education coordinator, and I'd be happy to answer any of those questions that you have. So thanks for joining us again this week, and we hope to see you next week. Bye.